coming to you raw and unscripted. Beaming across Ontario and beyond to places like West Bloor Village, Barrie, Unionville, and Niagara. This is the Real Hickson Real Estate Podcast. Whether you're listening on your commute or putting on your suit, whether it's your morning stroll or you're on patrol, you just finished prayer or dropped the kids at daycare, you're in the bar, your car, or listening with the bathroom door ajar, near or far, this is the Jess and Giro Show. We're grateful for flattery and prone to inaccuracies. This is your guide to Toronto culture, people, events, news, but most importantly, real estate talk. Yes, hello guys. Welcome back to the podcast, Hickson Real Estate Podcast, The Real, where we discuss things in regards to real estate around Toronto and the GTA. We discuss news, culture, all that kind of fun stuff. I'm by myself today on my lonesome. Now, I will just quickly tell you, the subject of today's podcast is about renting, renters in the GTA and abroad, what you can expect, kind of tips and tricks, how the process all works. It seems simple and straightforward, but it's a little bit more complex than that. Jess isn't with me today. It's been very, very busy, guys. We've been trying to pump out a couple of podcasts. The market is rebounding. Just as a quick note to talk about the market, it's rebounding. Not in all areas, but in most. We're seeing an uptake in certain things, places starting to move very quickly, whether it's renting or it's sales. It's just what's happening. I think we're starting to see a slowdown in the market in proper downtown for different kind of, whether it's renting or sales, and more of a push out to the suburbs. But we'd like to cover more of that in depth. I'd like to have Jess with me when we talk about that. As I said, today's topic is in regards to renting. Now, it seems straightforward, as I mentioned, but it's a little trickier. There's a few things to consider when you're moving forward and wanting to find a new place. I've actually gone ahead and, because I just get a lot of people asking me about renting and how it all works, and I do help a lot of renters on the buying side and as well as the listing side. That's a different podcast, but basically I'll be helping anyone that's looking to lease for themselves all around the GTA. I've come up with a questionnaire. First and foremost, I've come up with a questionnaire that I'll be referring to today, and I've also come up with a bunch of helpful info that I'll be sharing with you guys today. So basically, when I get someone that is referred to me or replies to some of my material in terms of renting, I generally refer them to this form. And you guys can access this form. If you'd like to see this form, I can send it to you. I can email it to you. Just hit us up at hicksonrealestateteam@gmail.com. That's hicksonrealestateteam@gmail.com. Now, I'm going to go through it today. Basically, this questionnaire allows me to very quickly find out where you are, or where your position is, and kind of helps me to find you the most suitable rentals, because there are a lot of different kind of things out there. There's short-term, there's mostly long-term, but there is sometimes short-term. We have furnished apartments sometimes, pet-friendly places, all those kinds of things. So I'm just going to run through it just briefly today. So the kinds of things that I do ask for, kind of obviously what neighborhoods do you prefer to live? What kind of property are you looking to rent? Whether it's a condo, apartment, townhouse, house. You'll be surprised in some certain circumstances, in terms of prices, you may be able to afford an older kind of place. Maybe it's not as nice as these brand new condos, but it definitely gives you the space that you probably want, maybe a backyard. Those are the kinds of things to consider. Do you need parking spots? Do you need a locker? Whether that's important to you or not. Do bear in mind, in certain circumstances, you can get rentals that don't have either of those two things, but that you will be able to rent further down the line. Typically, the parking and lockers can only be rented by the residents of that building. And some people have, especially owners, they have extra lockers or they have extra parking spaces that they're happy to rent out to you. And that's kind of a private deal. How many beds and baths do you need? This is all obvious stuff. Dens, of course, are in the equation as well. Do you want a little kids room? Do you want an office? All that kind of stuff. And what's your max budget, excluding hydro? I will tell you that for the most part, some utilities, if not all utilities, are extra. In the older buildings, you'll get it all included. But a lot of the time these days, there's just the hydro on top of what you're going to pay for the unit. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, when you're looking to move by. Now, this will be affected basically in Ontario. You've got 60 days notice, either from the landlord to the tenant or from the tenant to the landlord, whoever to move. And so basically you're looking at two things. You're looking at vacant units, and that is pretty much ready straight away. I mean, in certain cases, maybe within a few days, if you can organize yourself. In a lot of other cases, it is tenanted. You do need to give 60 days notice. And so you should be looking about 60 days out. That's about the sweet spot. That's when everyone starts to look. Of course, you've got to give in your notice first if that's where you're at. And then you can start the search. I will say, you only need to find one place. So it may take, if you work efficiently with me, for example, I could probably find you a place in a week. We can look at 3 or 4 or 5 places if that's enough. And hopefully all goes well. But something to keep in mind, a lot of landlords in terms of employment, they want your employment. You don't have to have the best job, for sure. It's really up to the landlord. It's a funny thing. It's a gray area. Some landlords, they just want to see that you've got a decent job or a reasonable job, and they will look into your salary or your wage or the bonuses, all that kind of stuff, just to share with them that information, just to make sure they feel comfortable leasing it out to you and making sure that you can pay your rent every month. As we know, in COVID times, that's become a point of contention, whether whether you should pay rent, etc., etc. We've covered that in a previous podcast. Of course, everyone needs to pay the rent. The landlords need to pay their bills as well. It's at the end of the day, we just need to keep the world turning. Now, the current credit score. Bear in mind that most landlords, if not all landlords, they're going to want TransUnion or Equifax, and that credit score is actually only usually current for 30 days. So if it's older than 30 days, you might need to pull another one. Generally, you get one free per year, I believe. Just checking that to yourself. Please don't rely on third-party apps. The third-party apps like Credit Karma, apps like that, they really love to tell you that your credit score is 900, which is the most. Just as a joke, they really like to tell you that your credit score is a lot higher than it is. And then you get the shock of when you actually reach out to the more verified credit agencies, you find that it's a bit lower. So just make sure that you're using TransUnion and Equifax. Another good thing I like to ask is why are you looking to move? What's your motivation? Sometimes I just find people that are just thinking of moving. They might actually find that 10 years ago, they rented a place for $1,200 in Yonge and Eglinton, and now the rent is well over $2,000. And, is that a good move for you? Maybe your place is old. Maybe they're tearing it down, which is quite common these days. Unfortunately, the prices have gone up a lot in the last 5 years especially. And, it's important for me to find out why you're moving. It lets me know kind of what your intentions are, and I can kind of tell if you're just kicking tires or not. Do you have any pets, or do you smoke? Obviously, this is a given. Not many landlords, if any, like the smokers. But we do understand there's some smokers out there, so just be wary of when you're looking to move. Will the new place allow it? Or maybe you should just quit smoking. I don't know. That's my opinion to do that, but we're not here to talk about morals today. The other ones, do you have pets? Fortunately, Toronto and the surrounding GTA is pretty pet friendly. Cats, dogs, of course. What it comes down to in condos, for example, is the bylaws. And the bylaws either prohibit pets, that's very rare if you ask me, but more likely they're going to prohibit the type of pets or the number of pets. So you can't have 5 gigantic Dobermans. You can't have 10 cats living in your house. Lizards, reptiles, all those kinds of exotic species. Maybe that's not allowed, but it's just something worth looking into when you move into your place. Now, I also ask, are the tenants in the position to put up first and last month's rent plus an additional extra month? Now, in certain circumstances, I've worked from Australians that have come from Australia, other kind of immigrating countries, or people that are between jobs. Their kind of financial positions changed. If you don't have good credit or if you don't have employment, this is something else that you can consider. Now, just make note that it is illegal for landlords to ask of you more than first and last month's rent. It's illegal. However, you can offer it. Now, if it's a bomb place and you know it's going to get swept off the market and you're really between jobs or you just moved here, it is actually more common than you think to offer extra month's rent up front. Now, in the long run, you're not paying anything extra for it. For the landlord, it's more security. At the end of the day, that's really what they're concerned about. Are you a nice person? Can I expect them to pay rent every month? That's something else that you can do. I've heard stories of 6 to 12 months up front. I think that's a little silly, but in certain circumstances, it is necessary. And the other option is, if needed, do you have any family that can be the guarantor on your lease? Similarly, if you're moving out of home, or if your employment's not so great, or if your credit's not so great, sometimes landlords like that they can have mum or dad or another close-knit family member that can guarantor, basically allowing you to have a bit more security. And if you're unable to pay your rent in certain circumstances, they can reach out to your family member that's guarantored for you and help out that way. Okay, so that's the kind of questions that I like to ask. As I said, it helps me get to the bottom quicker, helps figure out exactly what you need and what's available for you. So now I'm going to move on to how does it work? Okay, so number one, as I just explained, fill out the questionnaire. Number two, basically from that point on, I know what I'm gonna do for you. I've got your email address. I'm gonna start sending you some listings. So now when we search for some suitable listings, we find that Jess and I find we send it to you, and we know that everyone likes to search for themselves. We're not stupid. We're not the gatekeepers here. There's plenty of places that you can look. We encourage you to look on realtor.ca. If you find anything there, you can send a link to us or even the MLS number. That is actually the only site that's directly connected to MLS. It's the portal that we use. So you can see as much as we can for the most part. We can see a little bit more, but basically what you have to worry about is, if you want to look, you can go into realtor.ca. It is the most trusted, it is the most up-to-date, and it's the most comprehensible. I will like to direct you away. There's a lot of other third-party websites. There's Zumpa, there's PadMapper, there's Zolo. Fine. They get all their information from MLS. I get that. But commonly, they're out of date. A lot of disappointment when you think this place is perfect. I'm going to nab it, and then only to find out once you go through the steps that it's already leased. Look, you can still use it, but as I said, realtor.ca is the best one for that. After deciding on something you like, we'll basically go through and book the showings. Okay, and we'll organize the time to show the units to you. As I said, for the vacant units, showings are usually quick to confirm. They don't have anyone living there, and they have little restrictions that's nice and easy to go and see. For the most part, the tenanted units, by law, we need 24 hours written notice to the current tenant, and then they also need to confirm for us that we can go as well. Okay? The hours are restricted to see units for tenanted units between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., so you can't see outside of these hours. Generally, there are half an hour or hour showings. These days, it's a little bit more fragile, the situation, just because a lot of precautions for COVID, etc., etc. There's basically more restrictions we've found. And of course, you've got to go in gloves, mask, all that kind of stuff. Now they're telling you, don't touch light switches. So basically, a lot of good agents will tell their tenants or the owners that are living there, they'll say, put all the lights on, put all the doors open. So when someone walks in, when I take you through, we don't have to touch anything. That's at least the way it's going to go until all this COVID stuff is over. But yeah, as I said, we got to get that 24 hours written notice in. So I know you're dying to see a place, and I know that sometimes these places are moving quickly, and I'll try and move as quickly as we need to move. But basically, we do need that 24 hours notice. So think, okay, I'm working all day tomorrow, all day the next day. Try and think ahead. When are the best windows? And then reach out to your agent and say, look, can we go here? Can we go then? That's the best time for me. So once you're happy with the rental, you go through, you like everything. I'll give you the listing. You can kind of see what's included, what's not included, and any more kind of details in terms of that. Once you're happy with the rental, we can go ahead and start the application process. Okay, so at that point, I've already asked you for the questionnaire, so I'm going to use some of that information to put onto basically just a general application. It's not for any one place. It's to just kind of detail your basic info. As I said, employment, credit. It also includes things like references, your current places of rent, if you are currently rented or where you're currently at. And this is the point where you can, as I said, put your references in. Some landlords call references, some don't, but I would always assume that they are going to. So even just put a family friend or a good friend that can kind of vouch for you to give the landlord kind of an idea of the kind of tenant you're going to be. And the way I send that to you is via a online signing app called DocuSign. So it's a very secure, very verified kind of app. It's a really cool tool for us. We can scroll through, even scan documents, any kind of PDFs, and we can put the fields in that allow you to either fill the form out or just sign it or initial it when we need you to. So then at that point, you have filled out the application form. Then I'm going to ask you for things like your ID, government issued ID. So this could also include stuff like workers' permits, permanent residency cards, but generally it's your driver's license in Ontario, etc., etc. I'm going to ask for your employment information. So, either a letter of employment or if you have your own business, a kind of an income tax return from the previous year, even pay stubs. In extreme situations where you really can't offer any of that, as I said, people moving fresh to Canada, you could include like financial statements. It's really, there is a general asking for this kind of stuff, but obviously you may be worried about your privacy. Completely up to you. At the end of the day, the landlord also just needs to see what financial position you're in, and just they need the security and peace of mind that you're going to be able to pay your rent. Of course, all these documents that you provide to me as an agent and to the landlord, it's all confidential. It's not shared with anyone else. And then I gather all your stuff together. So I've got your ID, I've got your employment stuff. You pull your credit, as mentioned before, the Right Way TransUnion or Equifax, and any other kind of supporting documents. Maybe you want a letter from your previous landlord. That's always a good thing as well. And I kind of put that all into a file. And the last thing I'll ask you to do is I'll send you the agreement to lease. Okay? So the agreement to lease is basically will constitute the fully executed lease agreement once it's all been filled and signed by both parties. It basically has your name, the landlord's name. These are standard documents that are affirmed by the Ontario Law Society as well. They're basically standard throughout the realtor world. And they'll have your lease terms. So it'll have how much you're willing to pay, and when you're going to start the lease, when the lease is going to finish. Usually the year leases that convert to a month-to-month afterwards. That's pretty standard. There are exceptions to that, of course, but that's basically what's outlined. And then basically it'll have things like your deposit, your first and months is usually what happens. As I mentioned before, you can add the extra months here if that thinks that you're going to get the place a bit quicker, a bit easier. And then it has the clauses. The clauses are just general clauses. They protect both the landlord and the tenant. Things like you can't sublet, no smoking in the building, all those kinds of things. That's kind of a whole nother topic that we can go through, clauses. But basically, your agent or me, for example, I'll take you through all that stuff if you have any questions. As I said, there's just some general stuff that we put in there. It could include stuff like whether the some bits of furniture are left behind to be part of the rental or not, and things like that. Going back to the price, I just wanted to quickly mention, a lot of people ask me, Jero, can I get a discount of rent? And I'm going to tell you the quickest answer is probably not. Look, the way that the GTA works, and as I said, things are changing and evolving, but generally I would say if it's 2100, it's 2100 for that 1+ den. There's usually not room to move. However, I will say this, in my experience, if a place has been on the market, maybe the market's not so hot, maybe it's a date that's not so popular. I mean, there's definitely some really popular moving dates throughout the year. Maybe there's something a little bit wrong with it, and whether you really don't care about that, I would then suggest, okay, maybe it's been in the market a little while, it's not moving. We could maybe offer $50, $100 off. Okay, that's the most I would say. Generally, I'd say you're wasting your time. Other than that, especially places that are going to move real quick. But it's case by case basis. I don't mind you asking, but generally it's a no from me. Okay. So then we have filled out the forms. Okay. Basically, I've got all your documents. We've got the rental app with the basic info on for them to see, and I've also got the agreement to lease, the formal lease agreement. There is also the Ontario Standard Lease Agreement, which gets filled out later. But be reminded, the Ontario Standard Lease Agreement, and you can look this up, you can Google it right now, you can see it for yourself. Any clause in there that clashes with the tenancy agreement or the lease agreement that you have between you and the landlord, any agreement, or should I say any clause in the Ontario Standard Lease Agreement, that will supersede. Okay, so they may tell you you're not allowed pets. Okay, now in a house, they generally can't tell you that you can't have pets. The only time that you can't have pets is if a condo by law prohibits it. Okay, the only other time you can't have pets is if you're living there, if your pet maybe bites someone, maybe your dog bites someone, or is a nuisance. But that's a very gray area. That's a case-by-case basis. Generally, the Ontario Standard Lease Agreement, sorry, it's a mouthful, that will cover you. Actually, in Ontario now, you have a lot of things, a lot of clauses that will cover you in that, and you are protected. Okay, so don't bother if you have a clause that let's say we send the lease agreement and they've crossed something else out on it coming from outside, and they've inputted something else that you're not happy with. Even though they've put that in, and even if you agree and you sign your name and they sign their name and the agreement is fully executed and it's in place, it still can't be enforced if it clashes with something that is in the Ontario Standard Lease Agreement. Okay, so you are pretty well covered as a tenant. So we've sent that off to them. They accept it. Basically, we give them an irrevocable time. So we give them 24 hours or 48 hours to agree to the lease agreement. I understand if you don't get this place, you need to know, because then there's another place that's probably going to go soon, etc., etc. So we need to get the answer pretty quick. If they go past the irrevocable date or the time and nothing happens, then the offer dies. So they haven't accepted your offer. Maybe they tell you, or maybe they just say, hey, if you were to just change this, we would accept it, blah, blah, blah. Of course, that's a very case-by-case kind of basis and in terms of what happens there. But basically, in the best world, you've sent them the offer, they look it over, they look at all your stuff, all your documents, and they're like, oh, this tenant's great, let's get them on board. So they accept the offer, they send it to you. Now, from that point on, you have 24 hours in which to, and actually it's changed a little bit now with COVID. You used to have 24 hours. In some cases, it could be 48 hours, but basically 1 to 2 business days to either bring a bank draft in or a certified check, or in today's case, it's more likely going to be a wire transfer. So you would go to the bank, you would ask to wire this money to the listing brokerage. They hold that, so it's not like the landlord gets it in their hands just yet, but it goes to a very safe place. And as soon as you've dropped that in, then the lease is absolutely finalized. In the instance where you can't get that wire transfer or that bank draft or certified check, the offer can actually become null and void. So you really need to motor to get that done. So then you've got the place. Okay, congratulations. Pop the champagne, the Prosecco, whatever you got on hand. Once the lease is finalized, you'll need to organize a few more things though before you get the keys and move in. So utilities, unless the rental includes hydro or utilities, you'll need to reach out to the rentals provider and transfer the accounts into your name, which will start on the first day of your lease. Okay. Another thing I'd like to add is the first day of the month doesn't necessarily mean that's the first day of your lease. If you move out on the 15th and move in on the 15th to your new place, guess what the first day of your rent is going to be? It's going to be the 15th of the month. Similarly, 20th of the month, 21st of the month, etc., etc. The first is just very popular because it's easy to remember. But that's basically just to give you an idea. If you move out of your place halfway through the month, you got that last month and you move halfway through the month, maybe to give yourself a little bit more time to move, you're not going to pay extra on the new place. You're just losing half a month on that place. So some people like to do that. Otherwise, your only alternative is to move out and move in one day. And that's it. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. So you're going to get the utilities. I'll be able to tell you the provider. And basically you call them up or you contact them. Some are very online. Some are still kind of just by the phone. But basically you'll set up the account. Sometimes you need the landlord to set up the account or start the account for you just to give permission on that. But basically, yeah, depending on your unit, what's included and what's not, this is where you basically set all the stuff up. And once you have the confirmation, what I'd like you to do is send us a screenshot, okay? And I basically forward that onto the landlord for proof to just see, yep, this person's going to start paying the utilities on the first day of their lease. Just please note, some providers are very slow, as I said. They take time to reply to you and or transfer the account, so just do it ASAP, okay? As I said, some certain circumstances, you're moving in 2 weeks, get that done quick, because sometimes it can take a couple of weeks. I would say, look, don't quote me on this number, but I would say on average, the 1-bedroom condo, you can expect to pay around $50 to $90 a month. Or for a larger home, like a house, a detached home, maybe it's a bit older, you can expect to pay kind of $150 plus, maybe $200. So that's something good to ask us as agents first. You know, how much can I expect to pay? And as I said, you factor that into your budget per month. The other thing you need to do is get tenants insurance. So just so you know, it is mandatory to get tenants insurance in Ontario. It is easy to search online, very affordable, and would protect your belongings from any fires, floods, or other disasters that the landlord's building insurance doesn't cover. Okay, you're usually required to get insurance of up to $1 million plus, which can cost around, I've seen different numbers, but $15 to $30 is a month is basically what I've seen. Sometimes even cheaper. So just something worth looking into. Basically, it's contents insurance for you. Now, if you have your stuff in the landlord's unit, if there's a flood above you, which you have no control over, the landlord, their unit will be insured in terms of the actual structure of the house or the unit, but for your stuff, you need to be covered as well, okay? You need to make sure that your expensive laptop, your stuff like citizenship papers or any important stuff like that, you want to make sure that's all covered. And as I said, it's very low kind of cost, and it's good for peace of mind. In terms of the rent payment, so if you're lucky and the landlord lives in this decade, you can pay your rent every month via e-transfer. This is something you can discuss with the landlord before or after signing the lease agreement. Unfortunately, it's not as common as we'd like it to be. And I will tell you that unfortunately, the most common is post-dated checks. Yes, they're still around. They're still used. I had to figure that out when I first came to Toronto. I used to see my dad using business checks back in the 90s and 2000s. Came to Canada, you guys are still using checks here. That's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, you would be giving them 10 post-dated checks. They can't cash them until the date you've put on, which is the 1st of every month, or the 15th, etc., whatever your first rent date falls on. And it's peace of mind. Then it's, at the end of the day, it is easy. I will tell you, if your bank tries to charge you for them, tell them, nah, it's not going to work. You can usually get free checkbooks. They shouldn't be charging you for checks. It's a little bit silly. They're almost outdated, but we're still using them. And just make sure that you order it early, because as I said, it can take 1 to 2 weeks to arrive. Now, the only other thing to consider is the key deposit. Okay, this will be a one-off e-transfer, as I said, if you're lucky, or it's just a regular check. So a regular check from a checkbook for an amount decided upon in the lease agreement. It is refundable at the end of your lease, or it can be used to replace lost or damaged keys, remotes, fobs, etc., etc. Now, generally, the number is between $150 to $300, between 1 and 2 sets. They can ask for more. I mean, at the end of the day, they're not going to use it until they need to replace the keys. Just try not to replace them. The mailbox key, that's an expensive thing. The fobs are expensive. Just don't lose your keys. And as I said, at the end of the term, you'll get that money back. But generally, you can expect to pay $150 to $300. And then you basically will exchange that with your post-dated checks the day that you get your keys. So that is quite typically on the first day of your rental. Now, some landlords, if the tenant has moved out early or if it's vacant, some landlords or their agents will be a bit nice and they'll say, look, I'll get you the keys maybe 1 or 2 days before. And this is all pending. You've given the insurance, the proof of insurance, you've transferred the utilities, and you got the key deposit in your hand, you got the post-dated checks. Okay? You switch that over, and you're good to go. I will say one last thing. If you're moving into a condo, you'll need to reach out to the building management to organize a new tenant form, stuff like parking permits, buzz code, move-in date for the elevator. Most condos require a security deposit for the day. Organize this as soon as possible, especially if you need to move on the weekend and it's a really busy weekend. You want to make sure that you get your window there. My suggestion, move during the week or move on an off day if you can. Just take a day off work, chuck a sickie, as we say in Australia, and get that done. It will make your life a lot easier in the end of the day. And from the date that you move in, any issues you have with the building or unit can be taken up with the landlord or the building management. Okay? Please, guys, keep on good terms with your landlords. Trust me, at the end of the day, if you need to move and break the lease for any reason, a medical emergency back home, touch wood, that doesn't happen, but things like this, you shouldn't be breaking your leases. And in a lot of cases, they can actually enforce them upon you. They may not allow subletting, stuff like this. At the end of the day, I'm telling you, it really pays to be on good terms with them. Say thank you. Maybe things need to get fixed in the unit. And the nicer you are to them, the nicer they'll be to you. They'll fix the things quicker. Keep in mind that brand new buildings, brand new buildings almost always have the carry-on warranty on that. So if you do move into a brand new building, anything that goes wrong with the appliances, the structures, blah, 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 in the first year at least, you can get it, the landlord can actually get that fixed by carry-on for free. So you can actually go to building management and they can get all that fixed, and that happens a lot quicker. Second year, there's some different rules with a warranty, and then after that, different rules again. But just keep that in mind as well. But at the end of the day, be nice to your landlord. They'll help you out. So, guys, thanks for being with me here today. Thanks for listening to me. I hope I answered a lot of questions for you. There is definitely going to be more questions. As I said, some of these topics, very, very gray areas, case-by-case basis. Please do reach out. You can hit us up on a bunch of different places. You can, number one, you can email us, hicksonrealestateteam@gmail.com. You can hit us up on Instagram at hicksonrealestate, Facebook, facebook.com/hicksonrealestate. You can hit up the Google page as well. I'd love if you guys want to check out our Google business page, give that a like, give it a follow. I'm also on LinkedIn as well, linkedin.com/in/Jerome Hickson. That's me, and you'll find Jess around there as well. Guys, thanks for being with us today. We'll continue to cover topics like this in depth. And at the end of the day, please share the podcast, give us a like, give us a follow on everything. We've got a YouTube channel now as well, and they're all connected to each other, so you can easily find all that stuff. Thanks, guys, for being with us. This has been the Hickson Real Estate Podcast, and stay safe out there. Stay COVID-free. We're almost there, guys. We're getting through it. Be nice to your neighbor. Be nice to your landlord. See you guys.